The rain lashed against Earl Patterson's old farmhouse like it had a beef with the tin roof. At 68, Earl had weathered many storms in these Missouri fields, but this one felt different, dare I say, fierce. Lightning split the sky every few seconds, turning night into a blinding daylight before it went dark again. Earl stood by the kitchen window, his coffee slowly cooling in his rough hands as he watched the storm unleash its fury. It had been 3 years since his wife, Margaret, passed away, and evenings like this really highlighted how big and empty the house felt without her. But the barn out back still stood strong, just as it had for the past 40 years, weathering every season alongside him. Then he noticed them. Headlights. Lots of them, creeping up the long dirt road leading to his place, sloshing through the downpour. Earl squinted through the rain-smeared glass and realized they were motorcycles. There had to be at least 20 or 30, if not more. As they got closer, the leather vests, the patches, and the unmistakable roar of Harley engines fighting against the storm became clear. Hell's Angels. His first instinct was to lock the doors. He'd heard the stories and read the papers about these Rough Riders. But as he watched them slog through the mud, one bike almost tipping into a puddle, something in his chest shifted. These weren't intruders, they were just folks caught in a nasty storm, just like anyone else. Earl grabbed his rain slicker and stepped out onto the porch. The lead rider approached first, a big guy with long, wet hair stuck to his face and a thick beard dripping with rain. His vest read, Hell's Angels MC, with Road Captain beneath it. Even though he had a fierce look about him, there was something in his eyes that Earl recognized, exhaustion mixed with worry for his crew. "Evening, sir," the man shouted over the thunder. "Name's Dalton Reed. My crew and I were trying to make it to Springfield for a Veterans Memorial ride tomorrow, but this storm caught us off guard. Any chance there's a motel or shelter nearby?" Earl shook his head. "Best motel is 30 miles east. You won't make it on these roads tonight. They flood like crazy." He could see Dalton's shoulders droop. Counting them now, Earl saw 53 bikes, 53 people soaked to the skin, shivering in the cold rain. Young and old, men and women, all looking worn out. He thought of Margaret. Not once in their 42 years of marriage had she turned anyone away in need. She called it doing the human thing. He could almost hear her voice now, gentle yet firm. "Earl Patterson, you've got that big, empty barn, and these folks need shelter. You know what's right." "I've got a barn," he called out. "It's clean and dry. Plenty of room for all of you and your bikes. You're welcome to wait out the storm there." Dalton looked at him for a moment, rain streaming down his face. "Sir, that's mighty kind, but there are over 50 of us. We don't want to impose." "You'll impose more on my conscience if I let you ride off into this mess," Earl interrupted. "Come on, follow me around back." The barn was bigger than most people thought, built back when Earl ran a serious farming operation. These days, it mostly held memories and old equipment, but it was solid and dry. He threw open the wide doors and waved everyone inside. One by one, the motorcycles rolled in, their engines echoing off the high rafters. The riders dismounted, peeled off wet gloves, and shook water from their hair. Earl flicked on the overhead lights, filling the barn with warm yellow illumination. "There are clean hay bales against the wall if anyone needs a place to sit. I'll grab some stuff from the house." "Sir, we don't expect," Dalton began. "I know you don't expect it. That's why I'm doing it," Earl replied simply. He made 3 trips from the house, bringing back old blankets, a big thermos of hot coffee he had just brewed, and every towel he could find. When he returned with the coffee, he saw the group had organized quietly. The bikes were parked in neat rows, gear was stowed, and everyone was checking on each other, especially the older riders who looked particularly worn. One of those older riders instantly caught Earl's attention. He was a black man, maybe in his early 70s, with a gray beard that showed years of wisdom. Sitting on a hay bale, another rider helped him out of his soaked jacket. The patch on his vest read Jessup under the club name. Earl approached with a blanket. "You good there, friend?" The man looked up, his tired face breaking into a smile. "Been better? Been worse. Thanks for this kindness, brother. I'm Jessup Freeman." "Earl Patterson, this is my land." They shook hands, and Earl felt strength in the older man's grip. "Vietnam?"
Earl asked, noticing a little patch on Jessup's vest. Marines, 68 to 70. And you? Army, 74 to 76. Different war, same mud. They shared a knowing look that veterans often do, a whole conversation happening in silence. As the night went on, Earl found himself sitting with Jessup and Dalton over the last of the coffee. The storm still raged outside, but inside the barn, it felt oddly calm. Little conversations buzzed around the room. Someone even played soft blues on a harmonica. A few folks had dozed off on the hay bales. "Can I ask you something?" Earl said to Dalton. "That patch on your vest, the memorial ride tomorrow, what's that about?" Dalton's expression turned serious. "We lost a brother last month, Tommy Vance. Good man, Navy vet, father of 3. We're riding to honor him and raise money for his kids' education fund." "I'm sorry for your loss," Earl said quietly. "Thanks," Dalton replied, pausing for a moment. "You know, most people see us and they cross the street, lock their doors. You opened yours. Why?" Earl thought for a moment, watching the rain pelt against the barn doors. "My wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. During her last months, people came by. Friends, neighbors, even strangers from her church I'd never met. They brought food, sat with her, and helped me when I was struggling. One day, I asked her why so many people cared. You know what she said?" Dalton shook his head. "She said, 'People are mostly good if you give them the chance to be.' She also said, 'Fear makes us small, but kindness makes us human.'" Earl smiled softly. "Tonight, I just chose to be human." Jessup put a weathered hand on Earl's shoulder. "Your wife was a wise woman." Around midnight, the storm finally began to subside. The thunder grew more distant, and the rain lightened to a gentle patter. Earl had dozed off in a chair someone had borrowed from the tack room when Dalton gently nudged him awake. "Earl, can I show you something?" Curious, Earl followed Dalton to where the group had gathered. In the center of the barn, they had spread out a large banner reading, "Tommy Vance Memorial Ride, Rolling for the Future." Beneath it were pictures of a smiling man with his 3 kids. "We wanted you to see why we ride," Dalton said quietly. "It's not about being outlaws or rebels. It's about brotherhood and family, taking care of our own." Earl studied the pictures, seeing the love in that father's eyes as he looked at his children. "How much have you raised?" "About 40,000 so far. We're hoping to hit 50. College isn't cheap." Earl nodded slowly and walked to the barn office where he kept the farm records. He returned with his checkbook. "What are you doing?" Dalton asked, surprised. "Margaret and I never had kids. We saved for retirement that never really came. This money's just been sitting." Earl filled out a check and handed it to Dalton. "That's $10,000 for Tommy's kids." Dalton stared at the check, his tough exterior cracking. "Earl, we can't accept this. You've already done so much. Those children lost their father, and that's a wound that doesn't heal. But education can honor his memory. Let me do this." Jessup had come over, and Earl noticed tears in the older man's eyes. "Brother, this is too generous," Jessup said. "Generosity is just love in work clothes," Earl said. "My Margaret taught me that too." What happened next would stay with Earl forever. One by one, every rider came over to shake his hand and thank him, not with big speeches, just genuine gratitude. The road captain looked tough, tears in his eyes. A young woman gave him a fierce hug. The older riders stood a little taller, showing their respect. But Jessup surprised him the most when he said, "Earl, I need to tell you something, the truth about who I am." Earl frowned. "What do you mean?" "My name is Jessup Freeman, and I'm not just another rider. I'm a federal judge, been one for 23 years. Earl blinked in disbelief. "A judge?" "Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I ride with these brothers on weekends during my time off, because they're my family. I've known most of them for 30 years, and I can tell you without a doubt that these are some of the finest people you'll ever meet." Dalton looked sheepish. "Judge, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Jessup firmly replied, "because this man showed us who he is. He deserves to know who we are." He turned back to Earl. "People see the leather and the patches and make assumptions, but Dalton here is a decorated Marine who works as a counselor for troubled youth. Marie over there is a trauma nurse. Big Johnny runs a non-profit feeding homeless veterans. We're teachers, mechanics, nurses, social workers. We're fathers, mothers, and grandparents. We're Americans who ride motorcycles and take care of each other. Earl felt something break open in his chest, this realization about his own assumptions and fears. He had opened his barn to strangers, but part of him still wondered if he had made a mistake. Now he saw clearly. These weren't strangers at all. They were just folks living purposeful lives, bound by loyalty. "I'm humbled," Earl said quietly, "and grateful you trusted me with the truth." "You earned it," Jessup replied simply. By morning, the storm had completely passed, leaving everything washed clean and bright. The sun rose over Earl's fields, turning the wet grass to gold. The riders prepared to leave,